Sure. So my name is Farah Laurent, and I'm actually from Ivory Coast originally. I was born in Ivory Coast.
Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi A14, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started with this episode.
Transitioned and immigrated to Canada when I was about 9 years old, and then really started my nursing journey in Canada, and I transitioned over to the US. So I'm currently in New Jersey. I've been a nurse now for about 17 years. I started my career in emergency medicine, but I've held different roles, such as leadership roles in nursing education, as the director of nursing education, and also, like I said, a nurse educator, adjunct faculty for university, did different mentorship roles, preceptor, and I'm actually currently the founder of Farah Laurent International Nurse Coach, which is a nurse coaching business that I opened up about a year ago, really on June 21st. So I pretty much help new nurses, particularly with their career transition from nursing school to nursing practice. I do help other nurses as well, but my main clientele is new graduate nurses. And I felt that there was a big need and a gap to really support new nurses. So that's why I decided to open this business up, because for me, when I started, I didn't really have anything like this. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast and the show. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thanks to you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate that you're here.
Thank you.
So because you understand what we cover here, kind of in the big line, we are about the African diaspora. That is people of African descent in different parts of the world. But of course, we also cover businesses and things like that. So because you were born in Ivory Coast, I want you to tell me a little bit about that, because that is important for us.
Sure. So, I actually left, like I said, I left Ivory Coast and we went to Canada when I was about 8.5 or so. So really my memory of, growing up there is not as intact as it would be if I was older. And I didn't have the opportunity to go back yet, but with my husband and my kids, I would love to definitely go back and visit. I was born in Abidjan, which at the time was the capital. Now it's like Yamoussoukro. So obviously the main language is French. So I really just remember growing up. And the fondest memories of growing up in Ivory Coast was going to the beach all the time, like pretty much every weekend.
That's lovely.
And obviously the food, right? West African food, right? The atieke and like the fish, and people call it different things, but there's like we would call it futu or fufu, and like sauce arachide, or people call it like peanut soup or whatever, those types of things. So I definitely miss that. But actually in New York City, in Harlem, there's a big African population in Harlem. So I actually just went to a restaurant there. It's called New Ivoire, and it's pretty much Ivorian cuisine, right? So I actually had some food there recently. So like I said, I have some good memories, but not super, super intact. And I just can't wait to go back one day. So that's really my memories of growing up there. And transitioning to Canada was a little difficult. Even though they are French speaking, the transition was still difficult for us as a family. As immigrants, my parents struggled. My dad was really the one working the most, and we were really on welfare when we first got there, right? Until he worked enough to be able to get off it. And it was me, my younger sister, and 2 older brothers, and it really gave me the motivation to really succeed. I felt like I had no other choice but to like really pursue education, further my education. And even in school, it was difficult because I had to take ESL, English as a second language. And I remember grade 4, and you know how kids are. It was tough because they would make fun of you and things like that, for not speaking English, and being picked on like most kids do. So, like I said, it was a difficult transition at first, but then we assimilated eventually. And then, like I said, I ended up going to high school there and pursued nursing, and started my career in Canada, in Ontario, the province, and then later transitioned to the US because I wanted to travel, because I love to travel and pursue travel nursing. But like I said, my parents really instilled in me, values of hard work, and really I wanted to succeed to make them proud, especially, having all the opportunities that you do when you grow up in Canada or the US. And I'm grateful for that, because a lot of times, not everybody has those same opportunities. So to me, education was extremely important, and continuing my education. I'm actually currently in a doctoral program, actually. So
That's interesting. Very, very interesting.
I know I talk a lot.
No, you don't talk a lot at all. We're here for you. Come on. All right. So tell me about this dream, this your nursing dream. Tell me, how did it come? Why is it so powerful for you?
So really, growing up, I always had an interest in the healthcare field and helping other people. And I use this joke all the time, and I say, like, growing up, when I had my little dolls, I would waste all the the Band-Aids at home, because I would like put them on my dolls and stuff. And I would say, oh, when I grow up, I'm going to be a nurse. So I kind of always knew that I wanted to help people. And I always lean more towards nursing, because I feel like nurses spend more time with patients, more interaction, and they connect a little bit more than doctors do. But really, I feel like, so my dad's side is Lebanese, and he was all, he's very supportive and he's proud of me. But in the beginning, he's like, "Are you sure you don't want to be a doctor and not a nurse?" And I'm like, "No, Dad, I'm gonna be a nurse, right?" A lot of Africans, they push you to be doctors, and other cultures. But anyways, I pursued nursing because I felt that was my calling, and right for me. So that's really why I went into nursing, because I always felt like I was a natural caregiver. I'm also a Virgo, and Virgo tend to be nurturing and, always helpful of others, and really like empathetic. So that's why I chose nursing. And funny story, in nursing school, um, my clinical instructor in my last semester asked me, she said, "Oh, what type of nurse do you want to be?" And I said, "Oh, I would love to be an emergency nurse, because I just think it's so interesting." And she said, "Oh, you'll never be an emergency nurse. You're too unorganized for that." And I said, "What?" And I said, "How can she say something like that?" Right? I felt like it was such a shock, right? As a student, you want somebody to be supportive and to say, "Oh yeah, you can do it," right? But for some reason, sometimes you'll always find that one or two teacher or instructor that tries to, kind of shatter your dreams, right? And I said, absolutely not. I said, I'm going to follow what I want to do and pursue what I want to do, regardless of what anybody else has to say. And growing up, I was always very stubborn and always did what I wanted. So that's another reason why I opened up this business, to help other nurses really pursue their dreams and realize their passions, because there's a lot of negativity, right? Sometimes even your own, sometimes family or friends will tell you, "Oh no, you can't do that," right? So that's why I'm such a big advocate for nurses, to tell them you can do what you want. And actually, that was one of the reasons that pushed me to go into education, and to change that narrative, and to be more supportive to new graduate nurses, and more understanding, and really try to motivate them, instead of deterring them from what they really truly want to do. So I became actually adjunct faculty and a clinical instructor at NYU, which is one of the biggest universities, obviously in New York, and it's worldwide, known worldwide. So I was very proud of the fact that I was able to become a clinical instructor. And my clinical groups were always appreciative of how encouraging I was to them. And I still keep in touch with actually a bunch of them. And I really, truly enjoyed working with nursing students. And I think that's what eventually I'll get back to once I finish my doctoral degree. The only issue is they never want to pay professors correctly.
Why did they do that?
I don't know what it is. I don't know about other industries, but in nursing, there's a real issue. I mean, I think in nursing in general, there's an issue with, pay and, adequate compensation. We saw with the pandemic that a lot of nurses were transitioning, and I'm sure you saw too, probably in Italy and other places, there's a big need for nurses. They always talk about a nursing shortage, but it's, they never want to pay them enough money. Even in Canada, there's a lot of nurses that are quitting nursing and pursuing other jobs because their working conditions are not great. You're overworked, understaffed, underappreciated. And they just don't, I don't know what it is. They just don't want to pay you. And it's even worse in the US, I feel, because I feel like in the US, it's very business driven, right? So the Canadian system is more, right, universal healthcare, and really funded mostly by taxes, right? So in the US, it's a lot different. A lot of people are uninsured. And I just feel like it's a very business-driven healthcare system. And a lot of organizations are just after money. It seems like they want to staff the lowest amount of nurses and see how much they can do, right? So, but there's only so much that nurses can take, so they become burnt out, and then they end up quitting. And actually, statistics show that 1 in 5 nurses will quit their first their first nursing position before a year. So that's 1 in 5 nurses, like 20%.
That's high.
That's high, right? And that's another reason why I chose to go into education and also open up this business, because I feel like nursing is very different, right? You can come through nursing in different tracks. There's associate degrees, there's bachelor's, there's transition programs, there's accelerated programs where you can finish nursing in like 18 to 2 months if you have prerequisites. 2 years prerequisites. So people are coming in with different experiences and different, clinical experiences, especially during the pandemic. Some nurses didn't even see or have any interaction with real patients. They had mannequins, right? They had to do simulation because they couldn't go into the hospital setting to do their clinicals because of the COVID pandemic. So you have a nurse here that's has never had any interaction with a patient, like a human, right? And now they're graduating and they're getting thrown into the workforce, and they're like, okay, here you go. Here's like your 8 patients to take care of. And they've never really had much interaction, right? And depending on the quality of your clinical instructor or your experiences, that's what you start out with. And if your orientation is not adequate for the hospital or whatever facility you're going to, right, you're not going to feel supported. And that's another reason why a lot of nurses leave, because some hospitals will try to condense their orientation. Like if you're going into a clinical area, like say the emergency department or the intensive care area, those are areas that are, really specialized. So you need a lot of training, but sometimes they try to shorten that training. And then say, instead of like giving you 3 months or 4 months orientation, they'll cut it down to like 2 months. And they're like, oh yeah, good luck. And of course, the nurses are like feeling so overwhelmed because they're not prepared. And I'm not saying that's the case in, everywhere, but it seems to be a trend, right? So that's why it's so important to train nurses adequately, give them enough orientation time, both didactic, which means like in classroom, and also give them experiences with good preceptors, because the other issue is a lot of preceptors are very new. You have these preceptors that maybe have 1 year or 2 year experience, and they're like, oh yeah, like train this new nurse, right? And sometimes I'm not trying to sound negative, but sometimes it's like the blind leading the blind, right? Like a brand new nurse who just hit a year is now training these other new nurses, right? And I think it's not just the case in the US, probably happening in Canada and other countries as well, because a lot of nurses are retiring or after COVID, they just left because for fear, of getting sick or, those types of things. So definitely healthcare, I'm just a realist. I'm not trying to be negative. I am truly a positive person, but healthcare does need a lot of help right now. And this is why I think nurses need to advocate for themselves and advocate for each other and advocate for the profession because it's not sustainable, right? To keep losing nurses like this and then still have the nursing shortage. But it really comes down to support, great leadership, and also appropriate compensation, which is, back to money. So
Talking of maybe the individual who become nurses, those who maybe aspire to become nurses because you're an instructor. What do you think maybe these people need to have in terms of, I don't know, their temperament, their understanding, because I think nursing is a different kind of job because you are a caretaker, you are taking care of people. So tell me about that.
right. So it's actually interesting. I truly think, I'm not biased because I'm a nurse, but I truly think that the nursing profession is one of the most diverse professions, meaning there's so many different opportunities in nursing. And when some people think about a nurse, they think, oh, you just work in the hospital, right? Or you just take care of patients bedside, right? But nursing has evolved so much over the years. Not only do you have the opportunities in the hospital, but you also can work in outpatient settings, right? Like clinics. You can work in public health. You can work in community settings. You can do work with like insurances or workman's comp. You can even, do flight nursing where you're just basically on airplanes or helicopters. Um, there's just so many opportunities. There's also a lot of people are doing it's called like nurse, I can't even say it, like anesthetics, not anesthetics, aesthetics, like facial type beauty things, like they're doing Botox injections and all these crazy things, right? So there's so many opportunities. There's like nursing forensics. You can even work in a prison as a nurse. There's so much. So really, depending on what you're truly passionate about, because that's what I really advocate for. Like if you have really good skills with say communication, but I think really communication in any industry is a needed skill, right? But even more so in nursing, say you really like talking to patients quite a bit, then maybe being like a nurse counselor or like going into psychiatry or something like that may be something that you might like. Um, or, I think really the main qualities of a nurse should be that, you just like taking care of patients, you like talking to them, you like connecting with people. Um, and it just depends, right? If you have the personality where you're more like introverted. Maybe you don't like to talk too much and you're very procedural. Then maybe the OR, the operating room, is somewhere you need to be. Like maybe you're super organized. That's the type of qualities you need for like an OR setting. But if you're like me and you like to try, things, you like to be busy, you like to be, running all over the place, then the emergency room is maybe for you because you never know what you're gonna get, and you always have to be like ready and on your toes, right? So I feel like there's for every person, there's a type of specialty for you out there. And if you get tired of it, the beauty is you can just switch and do something else, right? And a lot of nurses go into the hospital setting and think, oh, I have to be a hospital type nurse, right? And then they're like, oh, I don't think this is for me. And some of them feel guilty when they say, oh, maybe I need to go to like an outpatient setting or something. And I tell them, don't feel guilty about it, right? Because maybe that's just not for you. And even some people get into nursing and they realize, oh my goodness, like this is not for me. But you can always do something else. I've actually had seen nurses that went into nursing and then like switched into getting a second degree, like a law degree. And now, I always feel like it's not a waste, right? You still have that education and you still have those skills. You could still transfer it to something else, right? So now some people go and do law and have their background in nursing, and they can do like legal consulting or whatever it is. So there's a lot of different things, but basically, I think it's for anybody that's just interested um, in healthcare and in just helping people.
All right. So for you, Farah, so now you have worked as a nurse, but you also want a nurse instructor. Which one is more challenging for you, or let's say, which one do you enjoy the more?
So so it's different because I feel like um, as you grow and as you evolve as a person, and even just in your career, you might be interested in different things at different times. So when I first started in the emergency room, I thought that was the funnest thing for me because I was constantly learning. It was really exciting because there was always something going on. And I worked in level 1 trauma centers. So there's really critical patients coming in. Some people would be getting into like accidents, and you know, it sounds crazy because they're like, how can you like trauma, right? Or like people getting shot, and they're like, how do you like that?
And this one is happening all the time now.
Yeah, like stabbings and shots, and I'm like, I don't know, that's just what I like. So I actually enjoyed that quite a bit, but over time, I felt like it takes a toll on you, right? Because uh, you know you're human, and when you see death, young, especially young people dying of trauma or gun violence, it becomes very overwhelming. There was one time where I actually saw a pediatric patient. He was 8 years old, and those an ATV flipped over and landed on him. So it's very traumatic, like those types of things. So obviously those things, are very hard to deal with. But I did enjoy my time in the emergency room, and I felt like that made me a stronger nurse and a better educator. But I think my most enjoyable time was the time where I spent as a adjunct clinical instructor with the students, because I just enjoyed really, helping develop them. And a lot of them are very, excited and um, just have a positive outlook, and they just want to learn, right? So I think that was probably my most enjoyable because they really look up to you and they want to learn more. So connecting with the students, I think, was helpful because in my own experience, I had a really good instructor, and she was always, laid back and telling jokes, and she really made education fun. And that's why I wanted to become an educator and replicate the same thing, because I think education can be fun. It doesn't have to be, strict and all about business, right? Because if you don't connect with your students or the people that you're teaching, and there's no connection there, you don't create that psychological safety, they're going to be afraid to even ask you a question, right? So what type of learning environment is that? You don't want to be you know cultivating something like that. You want to foster um, you know a really good environment. So that, I think, that's what I enjoyed the most.
All right. Now you are in business, in that you have a business that have to do with nursing, with instruction. Can you tell us more about that, and what do you do in your business?
Sure. So, like I said, I opened up this business in June 21st of 2021 because I felt that there was a real need for nursing students and also new nurses, especially, to have guidance in their career. A lot of them, before I even started the business, would always come to me. I did a lot of mentorship. I still do mentor nurses. And they would always come to me with questions, and they would say, oh, can you help me with my resume? Or, I have this interview coming up and I need help. Like, what questions do you think they're going to ask? Like, how should I go about it? So naturally, people always came to me with these types of questions and always were seeking career guidance. So I said, well, what better way to help them is to really do a formal coaching business in career guidance. So that's really what I did. And I focused most of it on, helping them with their resumes, their cover letters, and interview skills. But I also offer one-on-one coaching with them. Maybe if they're not sure what specialty area to go into, or they feel maybe a little overwhelmed or lost, I just kind of guide them throughout their path and their career journey. Or maybe they just they're tired of the specialty area that that they're currently in, and they want to change. So maybe they want to go into education or leadership, things like that. So that's what I really help them with. And I also offer group coaching. I have a 6-week coaching program that I developed. It's actually modules as well as weekly coaching that I offer. But most of the services that I provide are one-on-one coaching. So.
Yeah, right. And who do you target most in terms of the people that you are serving with your business? Can you say anything about that?
Sure. So the reason I entitled it International Nurse Coach is because, number one, I'm internationally, trained and educated. So I got educated in Canada, and then I transitioned here to the US. But I feel like I have different perspectives, just personally, like a different worldview, just like everyone has their own worldview. But I feel like my background is very diverse. Like I said, growing up in Ivory Coast, having all these different influences from my parents, my friends, growing up in Canada, and now having, being here in the US. I also worked quite a bit in New York City, and it's a very diverse population there as well. And I've worked for different health systems. I worked for NYU, Presbyterian, NYC Health and Hospitals, Mount Sinai. So I feel like I have a really good foundation, both, like I said, internationally, just working with different nurses. So a lot of my clients are from Toronto, Canada, like bigger metropolitan areas. New York City, a lot of my clients are from there, and a lot are from California. So those are the majority of my clients, but I have clients everywhere. But those seem to be the biggest areas that I truly work with. But I've had nurses from, Nigeria and Ghana and, in the UK, Australia, kind of reach out to me and ask me different questions. But the majority are US and Canada.
Mm-hmm. But right now, are you still practicing as a nurse, or you are only an instructor? Can you say anything in that line?
Sure. So funny enough, so if anybody really follows my content, I'm pretty transparent. Sometimes I think, oh, maybe I shouldn't share this on LinkedIn. But I was actually the director of nursing education for a hospital here in New Jersey. And just recently, on June 20th, I actually got laid off. And it was like a shock to me. I just got blindsided. I was actually like in the middle of a meeting with the education team, and I got a phone call, and they said, oh, can you come to the office or whatever? And then basically it was near the end of the day, and they're like, oh, well, your position was something about the organization was being restructured, and my position was no longer there, basically. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, when's my last day? And they're like, oh, today. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's sad. That's sad. Come on. What did they expect you to do?
And that was it. I was like, not even any warning. So I actually have close friends of mine, and it happened to them. One was a nurse manager in New York City, and a similar thing happened to her. But I think they gave her like at least a month or two notice. And another friend of mine too, same thing. She was the director of nursing somewhere in New York City. Same thing. They gave her, but at least they gave her 2 weeks notice. Me, it was 0. It was like, I was like, so when's my last day? They're like, oh yeah, today. I'm like, all right. So they're like, oh yeah,
Thank you.
Go clean out your office. Bring your badge back. I said, all right. So I'm like, okay, this is how it works. So it's funny to me because I'm like, well, how else, what am I going to do? Right. Like, and this is what it is. Like in life, I feel like nothing is guaranteed. And you really can't put your eggs all in one basket. So truly, since I started nursing, I typically always had two jobs. I always had a primary, like full time position, and I typically had a per diem position. Um, so I always had two jobs, but this time, you know, because it was Monday to Friday, and I have two young kids. I have a 6-year-old, my boy just turned 6, and a daughter who's 2. With family, me and my husband, it's tough having two jobs. So really, this is the only time that I have this business, which is, I guess, my second job. But so yeah, that's really the story. So I'm actually myself applying to get another full time position, and because this business is really new and it hasn't really taken off yet, I don't have that luxury to just say, oh yeah, I'm a business owner and I'm just going to do this full time, because it's not going to pay the bills yet. But hopefully soon, hopefully in the next year or two, I'll get busier and things will.
Now, because you deal with nursing a lot, what would you say is the role of confidence in the work of nursing?
Okay, yeah. So it's funny you say that because I actually the 6-week program that I have, I entitled it, from new nurse to confident nurse, or to badass nurse, because I always say that, how can you become a badass nurse, right? And it's not nothing negative, but it's really, how do you develop that true confidence, and how do you confidently land your dream job? Because a lot of nurses think that they can't pursue what they want right away. They think, oh, I just have to take the first job that comes to me, or I have to go to, med surge first for a year or two, and then go to my specialty area. But that's not true, right? Like I said, my instructor told me I would never be an ER nurse, and I'd had to start in the med surge area. And I told her, no, I'm going to pursue what I want. And I actually, I don't think I said this here, but I actually got offered the position before I even graduated and before I even took my licensing exam. So I started working there 2 days after graduation, and they told me, as long as I passed my exam, obviously I'll still have my position. So I ended up passing, and I just stayed in that position. So it just goes to show that if you truly believe in yourself and in your abilities, and you're really, um, you have a lot of perseverance, anything that you want will happen. And you just have to believe that, and you have to really just follow your heart, right? And I really truly believe everything happens for a reason, but you also have to make things happen. So this is what I teach in my coaching business. You can't just sit around and say, okay, well, I sent that application and that's it. You have to be a go-getter. Like, if you have to call up a recruiter, you know message them on LinkedIn, or be as bold as like walking into the hospital and say, "Hey, can I speak to the nurse manager? I'm interested in this position," right? Because, like, what do you have to lose, right? If everybody else is doing the same thing and just sitting around waiting, right? If you're going to be that one person that takes risks and you're bold enough to go after what you want, guess what? Most likely you will get what you want, right? So that's truly what I believe in. And to gain that confidence, I think positive affirmations is important, right? A lot of people have negative self talk, and you just have to, like, just stop it, redirect yourself, and say, I can do this. I do have the ability. I have the knowledge, and really push yourself and really believe. Because think about it, right? It sounds silly, or it sounds I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but it sounds silly. But if you don't believe in yourself, like, who else is going to believe in you, right? So, if, like, I tell my clients all the time, if you're sitting in an interview and they ask you a question like, "Oh, why should we hire you?" Right? And you're like, well, I think I have this skill, I think I have that skill, right? they're gonna be like, this person is not even confident in themselves, right? If you can't even confidently express why you should be hired, it's gonna be like written all over you, right? Like your the way you look, the way you present yourself, the way you enter the room, like you have to have that confidence, because if you're walking in and you're like overwhelmed by fear and shyness, and you can't even speak, they're not gonna hire you. You know what I mean? So, and it's just like test taking, right? It's like you have to have that positive mindset. If you're gonna go take a test and you're gonna think, you know what, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for this, I don't know if I'm gonna pass. Guess what? You're probably not gonna pass the test, right? So it's that same positive mindset, like I got this, I can do it. And if they're calling you for the interview, this is what I tell my clients. Guess what? You met the qualifications. They want to hire you, right? You just have to just like seal the deal and just show up with confidence and be like, listen, I'm interviewing you too. Like, do I even want to work for you? Right? And I tell them nursing is one of the most sought out professions, right? We're in a shortage. So if there's any better time, this is the time to really go after what you want, right? Because there's not enough of us. So that's what I tell them. And also, really, I think education is key. That's my go all the time, right? You need to educate yourself, even if you pass your exam, right? Healthcare is always changing and it's so dynamic. What they're doing yesterday, right? Next week could be something different. So you need to constantly be reading, updating yourself, going to conferences, getting certification. So I actually have 6 board certifications. I talk about that a lot. People think I'm crazy, but I'm a certified emergency nurse, certified pediatric emergency nurse, trauma certified nurse, nursing professional development board certified, which is in education, and also nursing exec advanced board certified, and also patient experience professional. So all these certifications, you need to have a certain amount of experience to be eligible to take the exam, and then you pay a fee and then you become certified. So I truly believe in education and professional development, and especially as an educator, and if you're in education, right, you can't preach education and you can't preach, hey, go get certified. You're not truly yourself certified or doing all these things, right? So that's why I always empower nurses to keep learning, because no one can ever take your education away. And you're going to be a stronger nurse and you're going to be able to advocate for yourself and for your patients, because you know why? You're educated and nobody can tell you something. They can't tell you, oh no, that's wrong, because you're going to tell them, no, it says here in this policy, da 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 da, right? So nobody can really mess with you if you're that confident in your skills. I'm not saying be like arrogant, because you can always learn from others. But, if you're educated, I think that's the best thing you can do, and just learn from each other. And even if you've been a nurse 30 years, you can still learn from a brand new nurse who just graduated. So you have to be open-minded, and just continuously.
Now, another thing I'm sort of thinking is about the cost. Say maybe, for example, a young lady or a man in Nigeria, or maybe even in Europe, want to come and study nursing in the United States. What should this person be putting into consideration in terms of maybe the cost? What do you have to say about that?
So I don't know exactly how much it would cost, because a lot of universities and colleges sometimes have international fees, and sometimes it may even cost a little bit more for them to come study abroad. So I don't have specific numbers, but I will tell you, in Canada, it's cheaper to go to school.
It's cheaper there. So it's better going to Canada, study, then come to US and work.
Yes, because I think my bachelor's degree anyway, was like under 30,000 for 4 years, and this was Canadian funds, right? The Canadian dollar. But there are some universities in the U.S. that you're paying like 30,000 a year, right? And again, nothing against Ivy League schools or whatever, But, I went to school. There's a school called University of Windsor. Um, no, some people probably never heard of it, right? But guess what? NYU hired me as an adjunct faculty, right? So it doesn't matter where you go. You can go to a community college. It just depends on yourself, right? And how you apply yourself. And, because you can go to Harvard if you want, but if you go over there and you don't do anything, you may not even graduate, right? So
We are still going to pay the cost.
what?
I mean, you're still going to pay, no?
You're just gonna waste your money. But obviously, yeah, Harvard and these schools are great schools. I'm not putting it down, but I'm saying if you can't afford that, it's fine to go to a community college. You can learn just as much going to a community college. So you don't have to, go out and seek these crazy high universities that are going to put you in debt. And really, you're going to be at a disadvantage, right? So, I think if you can go to a community college, graduate debt free, I would rather, recommend that than going somewhere just to put that on your resume and say, hey, I went to this, Ivy League school, and now you're like paying $200,000 for your education, right? You just have to be practical and smart about it, right? Even there's some physicians or even nurses that are like working like 5-10 years and they still can't pay their debt. So it's just crazy. But places like Germany, right, you go to school for free.
All right, now looking into the future, maybe with the use of technology and everything coming into place now, because I know in hospitals, there is a lot of work going on in terms of technology. Where do you see the role of nursing maybe in the distant future? What do you see there?
So there's actually a lot of nurses that are going back to school for something called, nursing informatics, right? So that's like a big field right now that a lot of people are going into IT, and they're doing different things with computers, and they can get their master's degree, in nursing informatics. So that's a big field. There's also like telehealth, right? So especially during the pandemic, some patients were not able to physically go into the hospital or facilities. So a lot of providers would just be doing something like this and, assessing them or doing like psychiatric evals or counseling or whatever through telehealth. So that's another opportunity. And a lot of nurses are going into telehealth in those areas. So I think technology definitely is changing, nursing and also the healthcare industry. So I think there's definitely different opportunities, especially for those nurses who want to work remotely. Even for nursing education, um, I've actually applied for some online remote teaching positions because you could be in one state and teaching students in another state. So I'm actually in a doctoral program now, and I had professors who were in different states like California or Alabama or wherever they were, because truly, it I think it's changing the game, because really there's already a shortage of faculty. So a lot of programs are going online now. So if you have faculty in different, states or different areas, why not, right? Because now you could access those professors, and you can have more opportunities for students to learn. So
No.
I think
Oh, right.
technology definitely helping. Yeah.
Great, great. All right, Farah. Now, people want to get to know you better. They want to come. They want to connect with you. They want to participate in your courses. How can they do that? I want you to use this few seconds to promote yourself.
So sure, yeah. So if you are a nurse, whether you're a new nurse, just graduating, or maybe a nursing student that's in your final semester, or maybe you're just a nurse that wants to transition into a different area, you could definitely follow me on LinkedIn, and that's probably the most common platform that I'm most on. I have a LinkedIn live show that I do every Sunday at 12 noon Eastern time. And I also have different educational videos and different live sessions with Q&As that you can join. But the easiest way is to just direct message me on LinkedIn. And you can find me on LinkedIn under Farah Laurent, International Nurse Coach. And that's really it. You could just message me there.
All right. So, what will be your final statement here? This can be also a kind of advice to maybe new nuns, or maybe what nuns should know so that they can become successful in their nursing career.
So, I think definitely having a positive mindset and really believing in yourself and really thinking outside the box, right? Because really, as a nurse, you have so many opportunities and you can do whatever you want, right? So don't limit yourself, right? So like I said, I started my career in Canada and now I'm in the US, right? Nursing is global, right? Once you have that foundation of being a nurse, I could be a nurse anywhere really in the world, right? If they will have me, right? There's nurses in Africa that are going to the UK or going to Ireland and all these different areas. So it creates opportunities for you. And like I said, you don't have to start in the hospital. You can start wherever you want. You can be a nurse entrepreneur, like something like I'm doing, right? You can open up your own business. A lot of nurses want to be like go into nurse anesthesia because that's the most paid nurse, like one of the highest paying nurses. So you could definitely do that. You can open up your own practice, even if you want to go and be a nurse practitioner, or open up your own clinic. Whatever it is, I think you can do whatever it is that you set your mind to, and you have the resources. The other biggest advice that I think that all nurses should have, whether you're a new nurse or an experienced nurse, is to get a mentor. So early on, I didn't have any mentors, and I suggest that you get multiple mentors, right? So you can have a mentor maybe to guide you with like financial things or a career guidance, or you get a coach like me, a nurse career coach, right? Because I think that, it's all over the internet. There's different TED Talks about it. But if you think about it, look at all the athletes, right? There's like LeBron James, Michael Jordan, all these elite athletes have coaches and have people that develop them, right? So just in nursing, you need to continuously develop yourself, promote yourself, keep up with your skills, your education, so you're more marketable. Because look what happened to me, right? I went to work one day, and at the end of the day, they're like, oh, guess what? Don't come back anymore. Your job is gone, right? So you need to, it sounds funny, but you need to keep up your resume, like up to date, and constantly, be looking for the next opportunity. A lot of people put down millennials. I'm actually a millennial myself, or is it Generation X? I don't want to get it wrong, right? But
Gen Z
or Gen Z, sorry.
I don't know.
Gen Z, that they're always switching jobs and they're always like all over the place. But guess what, right? That's just the way of the world, and there's nothing wrong with that. In your career, you're not going to stay most likely in a job for like 30 years. And the truth is, a lot of employers are not that loyal. And I'm sorry to say, it's just realistic, right? So you don't want to put all your trust and loyalty into one organization and then boom, there's no job security and they'll let you go like literally in a minute. So that's why it's so important to invest in yourself, and continue your education, because the higher up you go in your education, right, the more opportunities you're going to get. And definitely surround yourself with positive people that are going to motivate you and elevate you. If you're around people, like even your family members or friends, and they're telling you, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. Guess what? You may want to second think about, should you be hanging around them, because they're just going to drag you down, right? You want to be around people that are positive and that are going to elevate you. And sometimes you may be by yourself, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you and your family and really look out for yourself. I'm not saying, don't have friends, but really truly take a look at what it is your goals are and write them down and take actions towards those goals and those dreams, because a lot of people have dreams, but they're just still, yeah, I'm going to do this next year. I'm going to do it in 2 years. And then it never happens. So you have to set small goals and take, small actions to complete that, those goals. And eventually you'll get there. It may not be in the timeline that you're looking for, but if you're consistent and you're persistent and you stick to it, then you definitely can do anything you want. And, just follow your dreams. That's really my biggest advice.
That's my sister out there. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I appreciate it. Sorry, I was going to, dress up a little bit more, but...
That's perfect. You're perfectly okay. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.